I was working at the quarry late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the monster mash. It was a granite smash. It caught on in a flash. He did the monster mash. From the experimental theater in the quarry east to the music school where the vampires feast, the ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from our electrodes. They did the monster mash. It was a granite smash. It caught on in a flash. They did the monster mash.
The Cremation of Sam McGee by Robert W. Service. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold, through the parka's fold it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd closed and the lashes froze till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me and, "Cap," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of moan, "It's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. Yet tain't being dead, it's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains." A pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains." Now a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loathed the thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow. And on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then, "Here," said I, with a sudden cry, "is my crematorium." Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so, and the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why, and the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out, and they danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, "I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked." Then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, "Please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm." There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Labarge I cremated Sam McGee.
I've heard this story is going to be a real smash. Let's listen and see if they spill their guts.
Man, I hate Halloween.
Yeah, me too. Why? What's the matter with Halloween?
Time to break the news to the new guy.
First, they cut off your vine.
Yeah, then they cut your head open. They pull out your guts. Or cut you up in tiny pieces with a saw.
Or a knife.
Or a drill.
Then they put a candle in you and light you up.
Or leave you on a porch to rot for months. Or roll you down a hill for fun.
No way. How do we get out of it?
Quiet, everyone. I know a way. Just be as ugly as possible. Then they won't pick you.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Shh. Everyone, I hear some people coming.
Be
ugly! These pumpkins, they're too ugly for Halloween.
Yeah, really ugly.
They're too ugly even for jack-o'-lanterns.
Let's get out of here. I'm hungry.
Wait, they'd be perfect for pumpkin pie.
No!
What a delicious ending.
I'll tell ya, I miss my days at the opera. But, you know, I have to just say, he was a phantom menace, for sure.
This is a story about three boys who were home alone. One night, three boys were home alone. Eddie is the youngest, Sam is the second youngest, and Bill is the oldest. Bill went to take a shower. When he got out, he went to his room to change. Then he brought his laundry to the laundry room, and opera music was playing. So he ran back to his room, and he told Eddie and Sam what happened. So they grabbed Eddie's BB gun and an old bat that was in the closet. And so they were ready for something if something happened. Sam was staying in the bedroom so he could warn Eddie and Bill if something was happening. Eddie and Bill were out trying to see what was happening. Then they heard somebody trying to open the front door. And that person was their mom. So they told her what happened and they were all great. The end.
Hearing some of these stories has left our little monster hungry for more. Wait, Zoe, don't eat that! No, you don't like dino nuggets! No, wait!
The Shooting of Sam McGrue by Robert W. Service. A bunch of the boys were whooping it up in the Malamute Saloon. The kid that handles the music box was hitting a jagtime tune. Back of the bar in a solo game sat dangerous Sam McGrue, and watching his luck was his light o' love, the lady that's known as Lou. when out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the din and the glare, there stumbled a miner fresh from the creeks, dog-dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with a foot in the grave and scarcely the strength of a louse. Yet he tilted a poke of dust on the bar, and he called for drinks for the house. There was none could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourselves for a clue. But we drank his health, and the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrue. There's men that somehow just grip your eyes and hold them hard like a spell. And such was he, and he looked to me like a man who had lived in hell, with a face most hair and the dreary stare of a dog whose day is done, as he watered the green stuff in his glass, and the drops fell one by one. Then I got to figuring who he was and wondering what he'd do, and I turned my head, and there watching him was the lady that's known as Lou. His eyes went rubbering round the room, and he seemed in a kind of daze, till at last that old piano fell in the way of his wandering gaze. The ragtime kid was having a drink, there was no one else on the stool, so the stranger stumbles across the room and flops down there like a fool. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then he clutched the keys with his talon hands. My God, but that man could play! Were you ever out in the great alone, and when the moon was awful clear, and the icy mountains hemmed you in with a silence you most could hear, with only the howl of a timber wolf, and you camped there in the cold, a half-dead thing in a stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold, while high overhead, green, yellow, and red, the north lights swept in bars? Then you've a hunch what the music meant, hunger and night and the stars. And hunger not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of lonely men for a home and all that it means, for a fireside far from the cares that are four walls and a roof above, but oh so cramful of cozy joy and crowned with a woman's love, a woman dearer than all the world and as true as heaven is true. God, how ghastly she looks through her rouge, the lady that's known as Lou. Then on a sudden the music changed so soft that you scarce could hear, but you felt that your life had been looted clean of all that it once held dear, that someone had stolen the woman you loved, that her love was a devil's lie, that your guts were gone and the best for you was to crawl away and die. 'Twas a crowning cry of a heart's despair, and it thrilled you through and through. I guess I'll make it a spread misere, said Dangerous Dan McGrue. The music almost died away, then it burst like a pent-up flood, and it seemed to say, repay, repay, and my eyes were blind with blood. The thought came back of an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash, and the lust awoke to kill, then the music stopped with a crash, and the stranger turned, and his eyes they burned in a most peculiar way. In a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt he sat, and I saw him sway. Then his lips went in a kind of grin, and he spoke, and his voice was calm. And boys, says he, you don't know me, and none of you care a damn, but I want to state, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true, that one of you is a hound of hell, and that one is Dan McGrue. Then I ducked my head, and the lights went out, and two guns blazed in the dark, and a woman screamed, and the lights went up, and two men lay stiff and stark. Hitched on his head and pumped full of lead was Dangerous Dan McGrue, while the man from the creeks lay clutched to the breast of the lady that's known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They say that the stranger was crazed with hooch, and I'm not denying it's so. I'm not so wise as a lawyer guys, but strictly between us two, the woman that kissed him and pinched his poke was the lady that's known as Lou.
Some stories are left up to the imagination, but some stories are a little closer to home.
One time, a mouse,
A bird.
and a sausage formed a partnership. They kept house together and lived in peace and prosperity, acquiring many possessions.
The bird was to fetch wood.
The mouse carried water, set the fire, made the table. The sausage did the cooking.
Thus, one day, the bird chanced to meet another bird who boasted him of his own situation, saying that the bird was working too hard while the other two enjoyed themselves at home.
For after the mouse had carried water, she could sit and relax until it was time for her to set the table. The sausage had only to sit by the pot watching food cook. When meals had approached, she would slither through the porridge or the vegetables, and thus everything was greased and salted and ready to eat.
The bird brought his load of wood home. They ate their meal and then slept soundly until the next morning.
It was a great life.
The next day, because of his friend's advice, the bird refused to do his daily task. I have been your servant for long enough. I am no longer going to be a fool for you. We should try a different task for a change.
The mouse and the sausage argued against this.
But I'm the master and I insist we give it a try.
The sausage was to fetch the wood. The mouse became the cook.
And the bird carried water.
And what was the result? The sausage trudged off toward the forest.
The bird carried the water or fetched the water.
The mouse put on the pot and waited for the sausage to return home with wood the next day. However, the sausage stayed out so long that the other two feared something bad had happened.
The bird flew around to see if he could find her. A short while away, he came upon a dog who had seized the sausage as free booty and was making off with her. Stop! Oh, I complained bitterly to the dog, but he wouldn't stop. Stop!
This sausage has 4 letters on it. She's mine!
No! Filled with sorrow, the bird carried the wood home and told the mouse what had happened.
They were both very sad, but promised to stick together and make the best of it.
The bird set the table.
While the mouse prepared the food, she took it into the pot, as the sausage had always done, in order to slither and weave in and about the vegetables. But before she could get to the middle, her hair and skin were scalded off and she perished.
When the bird wanted to eat, no cook was there. Beside himself, he threw the wood this way and that. He called out, "Cook, cook," but no cook was to be found. Because of his carelessness, the wood caught fire and the house was soon aflame. The bird rushed to the well to get water, but the bucket fell in and he drowned.
Moral: whoever is too well off always wants to try something different.
I hope you're starving for more. I heard it's going to be a howling good time.
We experienced many haunted happenings in our Cabot house, mostly shadows and echoes of those who had come before. But nothing was as disturbing as what I experienced one Wednesday morning as I was getting ready for work. I was in the bathroom, I had showered and dressed, and I was blow-drying my hair and going through my to-do list for the day. And suddenly, I had these images in my mind. It was like watching a movie reel. And it was a mother with a small child cradled in her arms. The child appeared to be sick, possibly dying. And the child looked at their mom and said, "I don't want to go. I'm afraid to be alone. Will you go with me?" And the mom just sadly smiled at the child and said, "It'll be okay. You won't be alone. I will go with you." And then suddenly I was overcome with so much emotion, I started to sob uncontrollably. And it took several minutes as the images faded for me to regain my composure. And when it was all over, I realized this was so much more than just an echo. And to this day, I still feel that great sadness.
Master, is it okay if I bring a date to the party?
You know, I was 12 years old at the time. Kind of a time when kids are starting to explore who they are and trying to fit in and see what's normal. How are you supposed to fit in when all you see is ghosts on your front doorstep and they read books to you at night? It was the middle of the night and something urged me to turn over. I don't know what it was. Something was like, turn over, away from the wall and look over into this little reading nook that I had built around my chimney in my room. There was a chair in it. It was lit up by a lantern because at the time I was a little nervous about the dark. And so I looked over and I saw this man sitting there. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel malice. He was just there. I felt comfort. I thought it was my dad at first, but I thought it was really weird that my dad would be sitting in my room in the middle of the night reading like a child's book to himself. So, I was like, Dad, what are you doing in my room? Because I was really confused. And he was like, oh, it's okay, go back to sleep. So, I did so, feeling just warm comfort from it, because I was like, oh, I know this person. The next morning, I woke up, and still in my groggy state, I went downstairs, and I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, what were you doing in my room last night? Both him and my mom looked at me, and they're like, he wasn't in your room last night, he was asleep, like he wouldn't have been up at that time. I got really freaked out by that because, one, I was anxious at the fact that someone or something was there sort of watching me. Really nervous at the fact that something could have gone on. Nobody else would have known about it. I was the only person that saw this person. And just really scared at the fact that there wasn't anything that could explain it. I thought it might have been my grandfather, my Ty, coming to visit me. He passed away when I was not even 8 yet. It was the 14th of September. My birthday is the 19th. But he wasn't if it was him, it didn't look like the Ty that I had remembered. It was very much younger. So at that time, we decided to call in our shamanistic friend so she could help us. Before she came, we had done research on the house to, figure out more about its history, which it was really difficult to figure anything out about that because it was all deeply covered. Almost none of it was online. It was all in the Historical Society part of the town. When she came over, we talked a bit. We had told her what was going on, but we didn't really tell her much about the history, so she didn't know any of that. She called upon her guides to help say hello to the spirits and also to figure out why their presence was there. And after that first round, she came back and she told us that they were there because they were having a hard time moving on, as any spirit does. Then she went around one final time and she helped the spirits move on from our realm over into the afterlife. She did this by opening up a portal that used to be this blank space in between the house and the old carriage barn. This area had been connected by our kitchen. So she had no way of knowing that that's how it was actually built beforehand. After she left, we went up to my room and we sat there, me and my mom. And it felt empty. Sort of like when you move out of a loved childhood home after your parents have passed away. There's, no furniture, there's nothing in there. There was a sense of loneliness. They were, finally gone. There wasn't this looming feeling that something might be watching you in the shadows.
that I had lived with for so long in my life. It had just always been there. And, you know, we cried. We all felt just this emptiness, this loneliness, and this guilt that we had pushed these people out of their house. This man, who we had figured out had been watching over me that night, I reminded him so much of his son, a blonde, curly-haired, blue-eyed little boy, which was a spectral baby I so often used to play with as a little child, saying, "Can I go upstairs and play with the baby?" I'm an only child. He never got to see that child grow up. His son and his wife both passed away of influenza, and so many other people had passed away in that house, as he was a doctor that had helped them out of his own home. It felt as though we had kicked out a loved one. It was just empty. It was, and that's all I can really say. That's the only feeling that there is. And, you know, time passed. I eventually graduated from my high school. I had gotten into the college that I wanted to, and it was time to move. I had to move somewhere else and leave the house behind. So we had packed everything up, we had closed out the house and, you know, locked everything up tight. It was nighttime and my parents were waiting for me in the U-Haul. It was so silent that you couldn't even hear the wind blowing. There wasn't a car to be heard for miles. I swear I could hear the spring snow crackling as it melted. And as I was about to leave, I felt this cold gust of air go across my face and my hands. And I felt a warm happiness from it, despite its cold. "You too," I said. And with that, I closed the door and finally left. Even 145 miles away, I don't feel alone. Do you?
I wonder what kind of car they will be driving when they come to the Monster Mash.
It was a different time, and prior to the invention of telephones and computers and televisions, kids in Cabot had to come up with their own forms of entertainment. One of the most popular ways of having fun was going down to the local creek on a hot summer day. This was the case for the Jonah brothers. No, not the Jonas brothers. Little William and older brother Noah were well known in town. They were known for being very helpful. They were known for taking messages from one person to another. There weren't any telephones yet. Or helping elderly people in town with anything that they needed. They did this often. They were well known in town because, unfortunately, home was not the most pleasant place for the brothers. As much as their father loved them, he was a salesman and he was away much of the time. This left them in the care of their mother. And as much as the mother doted over younger brother William, she despised and hated older brother Noah. She blamed Noah for everything from foxes in the chicken coop to spoiled milk. No matter what he did, he was always in the wrong. One day, when the mother noticed the chickens walking around town, she went furious. She started screaming for Noah. Noah, knowing what was going to come, told his brother to go down to the creek where they had been many, many times before, and told him that he would be coming for him later. He wanted to avoid Noah seeing, or William seeing what was going to happen. William made Noah promise that he was going to come. Noah promised and sent William away. When
Noah got home, his mother was furious with him. Before even saying anything, she struck him, as she had done many times before. As he reeled from being hit, his head hit the corner of the counter and he fell to the ground. The mother proceeded to scream at him for several more minutes, until she realized what had happened. Noah wasn't moving. He wasn't getting up. Meanwhile, William remained down on the riverbanks, waiting steadfast for his brother. As the clouds rolled in and the wind grew stronger, he stayed there, knowing that his brother would soon be there to come. Fortunately, come morning, they found little William's body down by what is now called Butter's Restaurant. It's been known as many things over the years, but Goldie's, Butter's, various different things. In any case, that's where they found William's body. And when the father got home, he found Noah's body. As the legend goes, on a cold, stormy night, you can still hear little William calling for his brother. However, don't go down to answer the boy's call, because if you go down there and he discovers that you're not Noah, it is said you will never find your way back to the land of the living. And what of Noah? Well, it's also said that on those very same nights, a youth is heard on the streets of Cabot calling for someone. And when you go to him and question him, he won't say anything, but instead will simply disappear from sight.
If you're out behind Goldie's on a cold, stormy night, and you hear the boy calling who is just out of sight, don't go to the river to seek the boy who called, for the child you'll find was no child at all.
Master! There seems to be someone at the door.
Well, go get it then.
Oh my God, I am so sorry. I'm late to the party. There was an accident, George.
The ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from our electrodes. They did the monster mash. It was a granite smash. It caught on in a flash. They did the monster mash.